All right, I want to talk about Clarence Thomas some more.
Thank you.
You know who I want to talk about? I want to talk about Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz.
He is
Brother Malcolm.
Malcolm X.
He was so fine.
Malcolm X. Yeah, not really digging the whole "he was so fine" comment.
Well,
it's kind
I
of
can't
creeping
say
me
he
out.
is. I can't say he is.
I'm mildly creeped out by that,
Just
JR.
what?
But hey, look, it is what it is. She
But-
said Malcolm
but-
X was fine. I don't really care about Malcolm X being fine, man.
You don't have to. I
Sheesh.
sure do.
You always saying something crazy.
Nice little red
And she's
brown
telling me,
hair.
Mama's telling me that you're not being nice right now. You need to get it together.
Oh, and tell her IDK what she's talking for.
Whatever.
Just shut it up.
Malcolm X. That's why I want you on this one first. And Mom, if you listening, comment here
Oh, you don't.
in social media where you at.
You don't want her.
You know, of course I want her to.
No.
If she's listening, I want her to. But anyway, here's what I want to talk about. There's a couple of different Malcolm X angles that I want to get into. And we played a clip of Malcolm X at the beginning of this segment. We talked about the ballad of the bullet. He talked about religion. Essentially, what he was saying is, you know, he is a Muslim. That speech was taken in the immediacy of him being ousted from the Nation of Islam. He was no longer a part of it. He was no longer a follower of Elijah Muhammad, but he is still a Muslim. He was still someone who was into black nationalism, and he was still someone who felt as though the empowerment of black people as a race is important. That's kind of the backdrop, okay? As far as Malcolm is concerned, well, there's a couple of angles. I'm not even really sure which one I'm going to go to first, but I'm going to start with, I'm looking at my notes here. First thing I want to get into is Malcolm X being banned from the schools in New York. Let's talk about that first, because there's a couple of things I want to get to with Malcolm. Let's start with that one first. You've got the school in Harlem. In New York City. I'm not sure if it's actually in Harlem. No, I'm sorry. It's in Queens. Still New York City.
Queens?
Still New York City.
What? Yeah.
Still New York City.
I thought you was gonna say like Wisconsin.
Well, we know 125th Street is Malcolm X Boulevard in New York City. Right. But this is a school in Queens that teachers at their elementary school have forbid students from writing about Malcolm X during Black History Month. Fourth grade students at PS 201 in Flushing were instructed to write an essay about a black American historical figure. They were given a list of potential subjects that included Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. When some students selected civil rights leader, and I'm reading this from
The Huffington Post.
When some students selected civil rights leader Malcolm X, however, one teacher allegedly crossed out the assassinated icon's name. Malcolm X was, quote, violent and bad, the teacher reportedly said. After learning of the teacher's characterization, outraged parents notified the school's principal. Quote, certain historical figures might be complicated, might be challenging to learn about, but kids need to learn about them, council member Roy Lanceman told NBC News New York. Lanceman, whose district is in Queens, said parents met with school officials on Monday to resolve the issue. Additionally, the city's Department of Education released a statement in support of teaching students about Malcolm X, saying, quote, Malcolm X is a historical figure and a hero to many in New York that we believe he should be celebrated in our schools. I don't want to read any more about this because I'd rather talk about it than read about it. I want you in on this one first because we know that you've lived in lots of places. You ain't from no place but Pennsylvania, even though you like to claim
I'm sorry, that would
New
be
Jersey.
Norristown, Pennsylvania.
You like to claim New Jersey and say you lived in New York and now
I
you
did,
live in
and I
Virginia.
did.
We know that you
and I also lived in Queens.
We know you're a New York, New Jersey fraud and everything. She's a New York, New Jersey
I pay taxes
fraud.
in Jersey, dagnabbit.
Yeah, but I'm gonna let you get on this one. What you got on this story?
You know what? When you said Flushing, and this is all race, and if they could block out, if they can stop them from teaching about any black person, any figure at all that was black, they would do it. And you want to stop miming? And anyway, I think that they should go ahead and let these kids write about it. It is seriously an outrage. Somebody needs to protest the school for such a dumb statement. Now, I'm just wondering, did he just walk out the room?
Yeah.
Or
But,
was
you
I
know,
seeing things? Yeah.
in my opinion on this thing here is it's not just about, you know, taking away anything.
They're taking
black.
away. our
I think it's more
history.
a masculinity thing. Like anything where you see a strong figure who is about busting that, to
They
get
don't
what
want
he
it.
want if necessary.
They don't want
he
it.
about it any means necessary. We can talk about it. That's fine. And if talk about it gets it done, then that's great. But if we talking about it and ain't nothing changed, and you still pulling out the hoses and you still pulling out the dogs, well, you can go get your German Shepherds, but we gonna go get some pit bulls.
They need to be at the
and we gonna go
schools.
get our own water hoses.
They need to be at the school.
And to quote Dave Chappelle, you can find bloody gloves at our house. So, but I think that's what it boils down to. I think anytime you see somebody not only say, I will take the passive approach, but if the passive approach don't work, well, let's ratchet that up a notch. I think they want to silence that. And I don't think it's necessarily just a black thing. I think in this instance it is, but I think as a whole, and this goes across color lines, that they are overall trying to squash the male in the family. Period. They don't want that strong presence. They don't want a fighter. They want somebody who's going to submit. And I think that's what Silence and Silence and Malcolm X is about.
All right, let me ask the question because y'all understand why I'm going here in a minute. That's why. Tell me what your feelings are about Malcolm X. What's your thoughts? What's your feelings? JR, think about it.
Pretty much just like any other activist. I appreciate any lesson, any teachings, regardless of whether it's my religion or not. I appreciate it. I appreciate trying to get equality. It just doesn't matter. I mean, I think we all should learn about his teachings, black, white, no matter what. I'm really disappointed that the school is doing this because these kids growing up need to learn about every aspect of their past, whether they're white or black. He played a gigantic part in it. He played a very good part in it, and they need to learn that.
I'm going to give some love to my folks in social media that's listening to us. We getting some love on MixLR. Shout out to my family in Mechanicsville, Virginia. I always want to say New Jersey. We getting some love in Jersey City, New Jersey, which is my hometown. Shout out to the family there. So we appreciate it. We had some technical difficulties tonight. We're still struggling through. But y'all hanging in there with us every single week. Y'all hang in there with us, and we appreciate that every single show, from Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J, to Live and Radio, the Green Room, Iron Horse Radio, Clutch. Did they just play that in Deep House Sessions with DJ Renee Melendez? Every single show right here, 6 days a week. Y'all hang in there with us, and we appreciate that. Call us up at 804-402-2893. Be down with the flagship show right here, Legacy Internet Radio. Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J, live right now. JR, what's your thoughts on Malcolm X, man?
Malcolm X, to me, he's like that gold standard. Malcolm X and both Dr. King, but Malcolm X, he's that gold standard. He's that yes, we can be passive, but we can also fight too. He's that, it doesn't matter, what the circumstances is. It doesn't matter how I got to do it. I got to do it, and we're going to do it, and we're going to get it done. And to me, if former slaves and slaves who were held captive took the view opposite of him, and they only got information from these people, or they didn't want to associate with these people, a lot of them would have never gotten free who escaped. So I think when you take an attitude like that, and the closest person that I can probably think of in terms of a slave would be like a Gabriel Prosser or Nat Turner. Like those dudes, like they was about it. They weren't just talking about what we could do. They was like, look, man, we gonna pick up something. We gonna do something. I don't care. I'm gonna leave a mark. I'm gonna let you know that I was here. And to me, that's what Malcolm X signified, and that's why we don't forget him.
You know what, I get it. You know what kind of really upsets me, kind of really just pisses me off, is when the dominant culture here in America gets all upset and up in arms when we like to talk about Malcolm X and we like to celebrate Malcolm X. And oftentimes when people think of Malcolm X, they think of the pre-November 22nd, 1963 Malcolm X, because we know everything changed the day Kennedy died for Malcolm X. We can talk about the Malcolm X before or after that. We can debate that another time. But there was definitely two different Malcolm X's. And they like to think of the pre-Kennedy death Malcolm X, who was so radical, who called white people devils, who scared the shit out of them. That Malcolm X. They don't want you to talk about him. They also don't want you to talk about Nat Turner. And this is why I'm going there. Because Nat Turner was spoken to directly by God, who said, kill them white folk who's doing you dirty. They messing with you, kill their asses. This is what Nat Turner said that God said to him, right? He didn't say it quite as crass as I did, but essentially he said, kill them white folk, right? Now, I don't endorse killing anybody based on what their color is. You kill them based on what they do to you. If they harm you or they harm yours, take their hands off. And if they still coming at you, take their head off. That's how that works for me, right? But they don't want to talk to you about the slave catchers. They don't want to talk to you about presidents who own slaves. Today's President's Day, by the way. They want to talk about presidents who own slaves and all that kind of stuff. They want to curb you from talking about Malcolm X in a freaking school in a city that has a street named after him. Come on, man, for real. They got a street named after the dude, but they don't want to talk about him in the school. Come on, man. That's crazy to me. But again, these are the people who own the media who have an opportunity to control the message. And when you can control the message, you control the masses. When you control the masses, you control the thought. When you control the thought, you can control what they do. When you can control what they do,
You control the outcome.
you control the outcome. Ain't no how to step on Marcus J. JR.
Hey, just a quick parallel here to what I mentioned earlier about black people and the use of the N-word and how when a white person uses it, they tend to strike because they don't want that person to even think that slavery could ever happen while they're alive. That same token is why Flushing is trying to wipe out Malcolm X and talk about it, because they don't want black people to think that they're going to rise up and do none of what Malcolm X was talking about, because they fear that. It's the same thing. It's just parallel. It's parallel, but it's on different sides of the aisle.
I can dig it. Ain't no how to step on Marcus J. Last thing I want to get into with regards to Malcolm X is I don't even know how to bring this mess up, y'all. Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj has an album cover out. The album cover that Nicki Minaj has out is a picture, a very, very popular picture of Malcolm X, where he's standing at the window with a gun. And the picture is the picture that most people are used to seeing with Malcolm X, with the phrase "by any means necessary." And Nicki Minaj has that picture on her, single cover, album cover, whatever it is, with the caption, "Looking ass N-word." And of course, the family of Malcolm X is not happy about that. And they don't like the fact that he's using his likeness to promote a record, particularly with the vile language. The word that Malcolm, Martin, JR, SY, we wouldn't use. We don't like that word.
Right.
But a lot of the hip hoppers today, including Nicki Minaj, is okay with it. Ms. Minaj's artwork for her single does not depict the truth of Malcolm X's legacy, is completely disrespectful, and in no way endorses by my family. Ilyasa Shabazz told the Daily News Friday, 2 days after the controversy. Ilyasa, of course, is one of his daughters. She has written a book. I've read her book. She's very prominent. She's someone who is very steadfast in her promoting her father's legacy. JR, to that, you say, what, you have any issues with the picture? You think that Ilyasa and Marcus J is being overly sensitive here?
No,
Do you
no.
think it's okay that, people will use that picture to do what they want with it? What's the deal?
Here's the thing. Unless there's some kind of rights tied to that picture, I can't really say, that she can't use the picture. Having said that, I think it's stupid, because when you hear the song and when you see what the song is about, and then that she's using Malcolm X, to promote that, you're basically saying that Malcolm X is what you rapping about. Is what the younger generation would get from that. And I think you can't do that. And I think that this is an instance where I'm glad that family is speaking up, and I believe more people should speak up. We should show the world, and we should show, society as a whole that, sometimes you can't cross the line with us. Sometimes there's some things that we do hold sacred. There's some people that we do hold in high esteem, and we won't let you tear them down, whether it be, people from another race or people from our own.
That's why.
First thing I thought of was, like you said, the rights to the photo, and hopefully they can get her to remove the photo. I just think it's disrespectful, period. And as soon as you said her name, I was like, these two don't go together. They don't go together.
How do y'all feel about the legacy of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King with regards to their paraphernalia? Here's why I bring this up. Bernice King, the surviving daughter of Martin Luther King, recently decided that she did not want his paraphernalia, which included Nobel Peace Prize, to be sold. And she has renounced her relationship with her brothers Martin III and Dexter because they want to sell his stuff. And because she is so vehemently against selling his stuff, she has renounced her relationship with them. Stuff meaning his personal Bible, the personal Bible that was used to swear in President Barack Hussein Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize that he was, awarded in the 60s. And Malcolm X's daughters are battling against each other because you've got one that's looking to profit upon some books, and the family is not ready. The other portion of the family is not ready to do that. And so here's where I bring this up, and here's where I want your comments. Do you think, that's why you first, it's okay to profit upon the legacy of these departed civil rights icons, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, respectively? Do you side with the family members? Because in both cases, you got family members that's like, yeah, let's sell that stuff. And then you got other families who are like, no, we can't sell it. Which side do you fall on?
I couldn't part with it. I wouldn't sell it at all. If you want to do something with it, then put it in a museum. If you want to do something with it and give everybody the chance to look at it, because you can't touch it. But I would never sell it. I wouldn't be able to part with it. I'm on the other side.
I feel the same way. I feel that if you want to profit off of these things, if it's a legacy that you want to profit off of, then there are ways to do it. You can open your own museum just for these artifacts. Mm-hmm. We've seen the place where Martin Luther King was shot and killed. It's a museum now. You can go there, you can visit. But like SY said, you can also take these pieces, much like they do Picasso's and things. You can take these different artifacts and you can lease them to museums. You can lease them to different historical societies if you want to profit, but still keep it in your family. There's lots of things in my family that have been sold off over the years. Land down in North Carolina, plantation homes and things that my family owned. Where Virginia Power is out on Broad Street, that big center used to be Vebco or whatever. My family owned that back street back there for years, and it sold off over the years. People want to sell it off. When my great grandmother died, her house was sold off. a lot of those things, like places where I played as a kid, like that stuff is gone. Like I can't just walk and take my daughter there and say like, this is where your great grandmother was. Like your great grandfather, he had a beehive out here. You know, he used to, you know, he tamed the bees. He had pigs. He had, you know, you can't do that. And I think once they sell it off,
that's it.
all you have is a generation of people who are related to Malcolm X or Dr. King saying, oh, this was my family, but you have nothing to show. You have nothing to show and have nothing to build on for future generations, and I think they're missing out if they do that.
Ain't no half step on Marcus J. I'll just say this: you can't sell stuff. You can't sell the Nobel Peace Prize. You can't sell the Bible, the personal Bible. You can't do that. You know, this is the legacy of iconic civil rights leaders. And these are the things that need to be a part of the family. The family needs to control it. Now, family don't want it. It's not. I guess there's nothing that you can really do about that. But for me, it's one of those things where it has to be a unanimous decision, just like a murder case. You know what I mean? Like if every single person in the family is not down with it, then you can't do it.
Right.
It is what it is. And you mentioned where Martin Luther King was murdered, you know, on April 4th. 1968, the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. I was there twice, 2 times in 2012. And the first time I was there, I literally stood at the bottom where Jesse Jackson stood, where he was waving at him when that shot came. And the second time I went, I was inside the room where Martin Luther King had walked out, where he was standing. You see what I'm saying? And so for me, it's personal because I walked those steps. Years later, but I walked those steps. I've never been to the Lorraine Motel. I've never been to the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem because it ain't there no more where Malcolm X was murdered, you know, in February of 1965. But I can appreciate it. And these people, you can't sell their stuff, man.
You can't.
You know, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to like articulate it, but I can't even articulate it and say no cool ways. And there's no cool way you can say it. You just got to spit it out. You can't sell their stuff. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. We're gonna leave it there. We're gonna take a break. We'll come back. SY is gonna make us wise, and I'm looking forward to it. Marcus J, JR, SY, J Grizzy, Lissa P, me, you, and the crew. Be back in a minute.